Right, back again with another edition of the Athletes Hub. Again, the weekly football roundup as always. And joining me to discuss all the ongoings in football at the moment is Flexx.
Yes, how we doing, guys? How we doing, Rich?
All good, Flexx. All good. How's your week going so far?
Yeah, not too bad, man. You know what I mean? It's been a busy week, but, the football's helped with that. So, yeah, let's plug in and let's have that conversation.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, there's a lot to get into, as always. I think last week, the Premier League weekend was actually quite eventful, to be fair. We've not had too many weekends where we've seen so many goals, particularly in the 3:00 games. But again, a lot to get into, a lot of results that, some surprising results throughout the weekend as well, can't lie. Liverpool losing to Palace. I guess United losing to Brentford wasn't a massive surprise. Chelsea losing at home to Brighton as well. I think I want to start with Chelsea, actually, because I know we've spoken a lot about Amorim and Man United's problems this season. Chelsea winning the Champions League last night as well, beating Benfica by 1-0. Mourinho coming back to his old club, one of his many old clubs, by the way. So Chelsea losing at home to Brighton on Saturday. And it's strange because I think Chelsea have picked up a habit of picking up red cards in matches recently as well. On the weekend, was it Caicedo who got sent off against Brighton? And then Sanchez being sent off the week prior at United.
Yeah, it was Chalobah against Brighton.
Chalobah. Yeah. Okay, was that 2 yellows then? 2 yellows or?
No, it was a straight red because he was last man. Yeah.
Right. Yes. Yeah. Yes. I remember that. Yeah, last man. But it just seems as if Chelsea are picking up red cards in games. Even the game last night, João Pedro got sent off in the 90th minute. So there's a bit of a habit there. And then Maresca was in his press conference against Brighton said that Chelsea have to stop providing presence to the opposition. And I want to touch on Maresca actually, because he's been sort of called out for his decision making, particularly the substitutions against United and obviously against Brighton when they went down to 10 men. Is he under pressure? Because listen, he did a great job at Leicester City before coming to Chelsea, but there's people out there saying that he's not a top coach and he shouldn't be in the job because he's not one of the elite managers. But again, had a decent start, won the Club World Cup in the summer, had a bit of a shaky start this season. Is he under pressure, do you think?
It's a hard one to say because, to be honest, Chelsea is the type of environment where if results don't go well, even for 2 games, your neck is on the chopping block, right? Mm-hmm. So it's a bit of a hard one to call. I would say that winning the Club World Cup has bought him some time, and then as well as that, I don't know. Honestly, it's a hard one because for me, I can't say, you go to Old Trafford, you go a man down, and then he makes a whole bunch of, changes. And then, in your next game, you go a man down again. And then, last night you go a man down again. And imagine if there was 20 minutes left on the clock, we probably would have lost that game, And so the team is not, for one reason or the other, doesn't have that type of discipline, in terms, or is it naivety because it's such a young group of players? And, if it is because they're naive and young, is it really Maresca's fault? Or is that coming from the transfer policy that the club has? So for me, I would say he's got a bit of grace. We need to see where he is maybe 10 games in. If results are still where they are, then there's a big cause of concern, I would say. So he's got 4 more games, I would say.
4 more games. Well, I mean, I think that sounds like typical Chelsea fashion, isn't it? If you don't get the results early on. But again, he's had a whole season there as well. He did mention last year when it actually did well, he said that, listen, this team's not ready for the title yet. We need to still improve it, build upon it. And you mentioned a lot of some of the naivety in the team. And if you look at both instances of senders off again, Chalobah's one and also Sanchez one the week before that, these are situations where they're both last man, or in some cases, Sanchez wasn't necessarily a last man, but made a rash decision, which led to him receiving a red card. So sometimes it's players on the pitch who aren't making those correct decisions, putting the team in that particular situation. But when you look at Chelsea this season, I know you mentioned that you didn't get a top 4 challenge for a trophy this year. The Chelsea that, again, we've seen for years, they're challenging constantly for the Premier League, in Europe, in the Champions League as well. This team, it looks like a good footballing team. I've said it before, but it seems like they lack that killer instinct, that power that the previous teams have had over the years, if that makes sense. Not just Mourinho's teams at Chelsea, but even Ancelotti, when he was there, he built a really good side who won the Premier League, played great football as well. You mentioned Conte, Chelsea won the Premier League with a really good, powerful side with Costa, Matic, Conte in there. But it just seems as if this Chelsea team is a bit soft in the centre, and you can get at them because they're not as solid.
Yeah. I mean, I agree. It's one of those where our goalkeeper ain't the best. The defensive situation is inexperienced, and you need that type of experience when we're never in a place to challenge for the league, but we're in a place where we want to maintain, the trajectory we're heading in. And that's why, for me, signing young players doesn't help, because yesterday they said they brought up an interesting stat, which was combined in the Chelsea squad, I think there's roughly between 40 and 50 caps in the Champions League. Whereas Benfica had well over 200 plus caps in the Champions League. And that's the difference between, progressing in the competition or making silly decisions in the game and potentially not making it as far as you should. We saw the experience when we played against Bayern Munich, and we saw what they did to us, although we scored some great goals in that game. And the club right now, the squad, is in a position where without Cole Palmer, we don't know if we're going left or we're going right. The team looks a bit lost in an attacking sense. In the midfield, we look quite solid with Caicedo there. And so I'm not too worried about what's going on in the midfield. It's just that we don't have that solid rock like we did with Thiago Silva at the back. And I feel like we should invest in someone like that. You can find a centre-back that's vastly experienced, that's probably 25, 26, that could fit in, so I'm hoping that they're looking at that in January, but that goes against club policy. So it's a tough one. It's a tough one. We'll see.
Yeah, maybe that comes down to the manager, though, because you mentioned, having the likes of Thiago Silva, and obviously yesteryear having the likes of John Terry, David Luiz, even Gary Cahill was really good, and going back to the likes of Carvalho in the defence as well. I mean, the manager, Maresca's, again, he's come from Leicester City. So does that play a part? I mean, managers Chelsea have gone for historically, have been managers who have been successful in Europe, whether that was Mourinho, whether it's Ancelotti, Conte at one point as well. Even I know it didn't work out, but Andre Villas-Boas at one point, he was an exciting young manager, but he got sacked early on in his tenure. So, I mean, if you're bringing a manager from Leicester City, again, he did a great job there, played really good football in the Championship and got them promoted quite comfortably. Yeah. He's maybe not identifying players that you would associate with Chelsea, because, again, I've said it, it's a good footballing team, but they're lacking that world-class player in these positions. I know they've got Enzo Fernandez, who won the World Cup in there. Obviously, Reece James has, had his injury problems as well. But you mentioned being lost without Cole Palmer, but at the same time, they have brought in Neto, they have brought in Garnacho as well. Yeah. So you would expect that the attacking sense or the attacking part of the team would have been addressed in the transfer window, because Chelsea, over the years, they've brought in, probably the last 2-3 years, they've brought in a load of players. Some of them haven't worked, like João Felix, he didn't work, Obviously, Delap is injured now. So Chelsea have addressed the attacking area of the team, but it just means that the players they brought in aren't good enough.
There's that too, because it's a bit of a Russian roulette, to be honest. Because you're buying young and you don't quite know what if the player will live up to their full potential, right? So it's a strategy where I guess it's what I would call spray and pray, right? You get a whole load of people in and you hope that maybe out of the 5, 2 of them are going to be, what you think they're going to be. And then we'll cut our losses on whoever else. Like yesterday and throughout the season, we've bought Gittins, and I can't really see for me what he is, and how good he could be, So that might be one that you might, say, hit and miss or whatever the case is. So let's see.
What about Tyreek George, who came on last night, scored in the Carabao Cup game?
Yeah, for me, he's not a centre forward. He's always been a winger. So being used as a centre forward is a bit, I don't know. And again, he needs time at this level. Like a loan move would be good for him, so he can get consistent games. Like maybe going to like a Sunderland where Gihu was, and places like that, Burnley, and places where you can learn your trade and apply yourself, because you're not going to get that time in the Chelsea squad. The Lap comes back off injury while Pedro's there. You're going to have that, you're third in the pecking order. You're restricted to the likes of Carabao Cup games and playing at your level against the likes of, League One, League Two sides where you score goals, because that is closer to where your current ability lies. So look, man, Chelsea right now is a whole project, you know what I mean? And, it's, I don't know if you remember in Football Manager, this would have been a few years back. They had a challenge called "Can you win things with babies?" And this is what it is. This is the challenge. Can you win with babies? We've won the Club World Cup. Can we win something else?
It's a project though, but again, Chelsea haven't been known for projects, have they? Again, they've always had that manager or the teams. They've always built teams and bought players, like you mentioned. They bought players who were already made back then. Players who can come in, make an impact, and ultimately win trophies. So I don't think Chelsea now, I don't know if they're taking a different direction with new ownership, but historically, Chelsea have always built teams to succeed now, not in 2-3 years' time. So if Maresca is going down that route, that obviously explains the transfer policy, because again, there's a lot of young players integrated into this team. So it would be interesting to see how that goes there. But Brighton played really well, particularly in second half, and ultimately won 3-1 there. And I want to talk about Danny Welbeck, because he scored 2 goals on the Saturday as well. And he's had almost this sort of late career resurgence where he's been really good at Brighton. And listen, I remember Danny Welbeck coming into the United team as a teenager and being part of that squad throughout 2008-09 and ultimately going on to play in the first team. Wasn't always known as a prolific goal scorer, but he was a good player and could score goals. And he's obviously suffered with injuries at Arsenal and throughout his career. And it's always nice to kind of see him kind of do what he's doing now, because, again, he's obviously a great professional. And, we don't always talk about players like Danny Welbeck. We always talk about the flair players, but people like him and James Milner, and even going back to lots of Gareth Barry, who played for a long time in their careers, they're the ones you look at and think, yeah, this guy's a good pro. So, what's your thoughts on Welbeck? Because, again, he's split opinions. Again, not the most prolific striker, but he's a good footballer, a great pro, and obviously someone who's got good experience now, which is bringing into the Brighton team. So what's your thoughts on Welbeck?
My thoughts is he's aged like, wine. He's got much better as he's gotten older and gotten more experienced. And, this is the type of player actually Man United should have kept around in the dressing room.
I agree.
Imagine, having his experience there, to lead, the squad that you currently do have, and, the different strikers that have come in, someone to lean on, I think he would have been fantastic. And, he's shown great prowess in front of goal, like that second goal he scored with that nice little chip, class. And that header, fantastic. He is really good, and for me, someone who, I think could potentially play his way back into the England side, if he catches form, if he's able to get, between 10 and 15 goals, I would say, why not? I think he's, for me, probably a better option than Ollie Watkins, because he's fantastic when called upon. He's got bags of experience and, is doing a great job. So, yeah, I hate that he scores against us quite often.
But Welbeck's great. But I agree with the England shot as well. I think he's someone, obviously, England play with one striker now, whereas when he broke in, they played with maybe 2 up front, with maybe him and Rooney, or Rooney and Kane, or, somebody, or whoever it might, Crouch, Andy Carroll. But Welbeck, I'll take him, because, again, he's got that experience. He's played for England for a number of years. And there's actually a period where, under Roy Hodgson, he was one of their prolific goal scorers, actually, throughout qualifying rounds and also in major tournaments. I remember the goal he scored against Sweden in that Euro 2012, that little back heel to make it 3-2. Really good player, Welbeck. And again, I'm just happy for him, because, he suffered a lot of injuries, and people maybe overlook his playing ability, because obviously he started as a striker but didn't score that many goals, and he always got compared to like the likes of Rooney, Van Persie at the time, and Berbatov. But a good footballer, and just injuries have hampered his career. But again, I'm just happy to see him almost mid-30 now, still ripping it up. And you just look at his in-game experience. It's not just his finishing ability, but he knows where to be, the right positions at the right time, and he's got that in-game intelligence, which is great to see. So yeah, definitely shout out to Danny Welbeck there. But yeah, I guess we have to come back to it again. United losing at Brentford 3-1. And we actually said it last week. I said to you, we're not going to be surprised if they lose to Brentford. They beat Chelsea, got over the line against Chelsea, but we're not going to be surprised if they go to Brentford and lose the game. And they did that. And Brentford were very good in the game. Keith Andrews, we spoke about him at the beginning of the season. He's a rookie manager. Is he going to be able to cut in the Premier League? Can he keep Brentford up? You'd argue and say that he out-tacticked Amorim on Saturday.
He did.
And I feel like personally now, I've spoken on the podcast before, he should get more time, but I just feel like time's up because I don't see it working. I don't see the things he's trying to implement on the team. He's probably got his ideas, but what he's trying to implement on his football team is not working right now. So I see one outcome, and that outcome is they'll make a change. I want it to work. I wanted it to work. I wanted him to do well, just like I want all managers to do well that have been at United. But it just seems as if it's not going to work, to be honest. And it's probably the time up now, to be fair.
I mean, it's a challenge, man. I think maybe it's worth giving him the opportunity to get it right, because let's be honest, who has got it right so far? And rushing to change sometimes doesn't change nothing at all, so I think you do need a few more transfer windows to, bring in the profile of players that might suit his system and understand the way he wants to play. But for me, I think where he's falling short is dying on his sword with this, 5 at the back. I think you've got to adjust your tactics to suit the players you have or to suit the game you're playing in. And so far, he's shown
this guy is not going to adjust. Listen, the thing that the alarm bells rang for me in the Europa League final against Tottenham, losing 1-0, take off a defender, putting someone in midfield, put an extra striker on. He didn't change it. He stuck with the same formation for the whole 90 minutes, and they didn't score. We didn't get close to scoring in the game. So, and he came out on Saturday and said we need to work on a lot of things. For me, that was strange to me because you've been the club for almost a year now. You've got one game a week this season. So you say we need to work on a lot of things. What have you been working on then?
It's a question, man. It's
a question. Do you know what I mean? So some of the quotes, I want him to do well. I think Amorim will be a great coach. He'll go somewhere, he will play the same formation, and he will win trophies. He's still young. He's 40 years old. He's got loads of time ahead of him to win trophies. He will do that. But what he's trying to implement this football club now is not working. And, you've been there for almost a year and you're saying we need to work on a lot of things. But what are you guys working on in training then?
Man, this is what he's going to be quizzed on, right? Because at this point, it's as if they're not doing absolutely nothing in the training. The grand total of nothing is taking place, and it's a shame. It really is, because the league is entertaining when Man United are battling for top spot, and right now, sitting 14th in the league is definitely not where Man United should be. And I don't think, even with the squad they have, they should be 14th. So something has gone horribly wrong somewhere. And maybe I'm hearing on the radio that, Oliver Glasner, could be the one to take charge. Apparently they got to wait for Amorim to do at least 1 year at United so that when they do sack him, they don't have to pay the full whack. All of these, quadratic equations, to move forward with Amorim, it's looking very, very bad. And I think, like you said before in, previous episodes gone, Jim Ratcliffe has a lot to answer for, and I think the Amorim's failures, as hard-headed as he is with his tactics and things like that, Ratcliffe should be looking at himself in the mirror.
He should be, but I said before, Flexx, he'll probably go and the players will get the stick and all that. But people have been running that football club for almost 10 years now, or 10 years plus more. They're getting away with murder at the club. The decisions they've been making on player transfers, on managerial recruitment, coaches they've brought in, not backing managers when they should have been back, sacking managers at the wrong time. I don't know who's making all these decisions at the top of the football club. And I've mentioned before, Ineos don't want to make the change because, like you mentioned, and I've said before, they look really bad for the decisions they've made for the last year or so. And they don't want to be seen as being, I guess they don't want to be looked at as they don't know what they're doing. But if you sack Amorim after a year in charge, you don't know what you're doing. Because when you brought him into the football club, you'd have known he doesn't change from 5 at the back. People talk about his in-game management in terms of taking up a centre-back, putting another one in there. He did that at Sporting Lisbon. Who's watching him? Who's analysing this stuff before they bring him in there? Whenever United ever played 5 at the back historically, who's bringing them in there to match the club's values? These are all questions you need to ask. So who's making these decisions? Because I don't blame him, because he's brought in to do a job, to fix a problem that Ten Hag had. But he won't change it. He doesn't have to change it, because when you brought him into the football club, you knew what the guy was about. You knew his philosophy. You knew how he wanted to play, how he sets his team up. So that's the reason you brought him in the first place. So to then sack him makes you guys look like you don't know what you're doing. And again, you've gave Ten Hag a new contract when he should have been sacked, which was bizarre in the first place. You brought in Dan Ashworth to help out. He was sacked for whatever reason. And now you've brought in a young manager, who apparently is a future, you're going to back him all the way. And now, after a year, he's going to be sacked. What are you guys doing? Who's making these decisions? And this is what we need to ask these questions of the ownership, because there's been bad decision after bad decision after bad decision. And, again, Luke Shaw's a good player on his day, but Luke Shaw's not reliable, though. Luke Shaw's not reliable throughout the whole course of a season, but he's still there. So who's giving out these contracts? Phil Jones took forever to be released. Yes, he had injuries, but he's still being paid. We're not kicking a football for 2-3 years. Like who's giving a green light to these deals? You know what I mean? United, again, look, United have been left behind in so many departments: recruitment, football, how we play football. Listen, all these of the last 10 years, right? You've seen Man City win the Premier League multiple times. You've seen Liverpool win it. You've seen Chelsea win it. Out of all those teams, right, I've just mentioned there, and those campaigns, and all the players United have signed throughout 2013 to now, what players would get into those championship winning teams? Liverpool, Man City, and Chelsea.
It's
apart from maybe Bruno Fernandes, maybe you might say Pogba on his day, De Gea probably getting there. Maybe what other player gets in those teams? For all the players who've signed all these years, right? In those teams, like the City team that won it, Liverpool team that won it, and Chelsea team that won it, what players from United get into those teams?
Man, you make a very good point. And
you spent what? How many? You spent billions of pounds, right? Let's spend what, $1 billion or something over the last 11 years. Yeah. But all those title-winning teams, after all the players we've signed, right? Not one of these. I'll probably say maybe 2 or 3 could get into those championship-winning teams. That's how bad it's been. When you think about it.
I mean, it's sad because, even like I can only go back to compare to Chelsea because we've, in the last couple 3 years since the new ownership, billions have been spent. But even with billions being spent, at least there's a Club World Cup to show for it, right? And I know people take the mick out of the cup and whatnot, but at least there's something on the table to say, okay, we spent this type of money. There is some return on investment. That is the worry for United, is that with all the money that's been spent, the last return on investment was the FA Cup, and it's not, I guess, it's considered major within, our shores, but, you're looking for something that's maybe a little bit more grandioso, not a conference league, sorry, a Europa League would have sufficed. It would have at least, quenched the thirst. I would have given faith to the fans to say, we're working on something here. His big speech he gave at the end of the season, and then now, we're looking at the form that is currently ongoing. It's kind of like he's choking on his own words at this point. I mean, look,
it's crazy.
I ask you this question: is Man United too big to fail?
No, it's not. It's what do you mean too big to fail in terms of what the club?
In terms of, is it possible? Can we see a world where United are genuinely fighting, to be a top 10 team?
I think you could because we've seen that last season. We've seen them finish above relegation zone last season. No club is too big to fail. We've seen Liverpool go through their periods when they had the likes of Kenny Dalglish in there, Roy Hodgson at one point. So massive clubs can go through these hardships, but it's because of the way the club's being run. That's the problem. The managers we've had, if I told you in 2013, you'd have Lou Van Gaal, Mourinho in there, and United wouldn't win the Premier League and wouldn't come close to winning the Champions League, you would have laughed at me. You would have said that you're crazy. But that's what's happened, right? A lot of it comes down to mismanagement, and a lot of it comes down to the players they brought in the football club who shouldn't have been there, contracts that they went on for too long, managers who maybe were hired at the wrong time, were great managers but hired at the wrong time. But no, United is not too not too big to fail at all. I think any club on the planet, if you mismanage it to the extent that this club's being mismanaged, you'll see these results. You'll see the outcome, which is what we're seeing now. A club in all departments, not just on the pitch, but in all departments that is in free fall, that doesn't know what it's doing, that's being left behind by other clubs like Man City, Liverpool, even Arsenal now. You know, they look like a great club. Arteta's built a fantastic squad of players, and now they haven't won a trophy, but you're starting to see them competing for the major ones, like the Champions League, got semi-final last season, compete with the Premier League. United, you don't see any of that progress there. They spent all this money, but again, what players in the last 11 years will get into a championship winning team for the last 10 years?
This is. I mean, quite literally. I mean, I think Onana would get in there. I'm only joking. But look, Bruno is a quality player, right? Yeah. So Bruno definitely he gets into every team in the Premier League. I have no doubt. Like, the guy is quality, and if played in his position, you know, he unlocks doors and does. You know, he's the reason why personally I feel like you lot weren't scrapping for relegation last season.
But he was still getting criticised last year. He's still being criticised.
It's crazy. People should leave his name out of their mouths, because quite literally without him, you know, like, goes back to the question: are you too big to fail? You would have failed. You would have failed.
You're not lucky. You're not lucky. And you mentioned about Europa League last season, a disastrous season, almost above the relegation zone. You have a chance to go into Europa League final, win a trophy for the football club, salvage something from this disastrous season.
Yeah.
Do you see the performance in Europa League final?
It's crazy.
No fight, no passion. Manager didn't change anything.
Nothing.
Come on. What's this club? What's this football club? I mean, oh mate, honestly. Let's move on to Palace. Palace were fantastic against Liverpool. Palace were great and have been great for the last year. Oliver Glasner, you mentioned him earlier. Great job at Palace. He's got this team playing proper football, proactive football, and actually going toe-to-toe against these massive teams. Beat City in the final last year, in the FA Cup final, obviously beat Liverpool on Saturday. Losing Eze as well, you know, you would have thought maybe he would have struggled, but Palace have been just playing great football all around, to be honest.
Yeah, they are. And you know what? The football they're playing is a joy to behold. Never in a million years would I have thought Palace, you know, at any stage of any season will be sitting third in the Premier League.
It's still early though. Don't get me wrong, still early. But
I right now, like, I'm a semi-Palace fan. Let's be honest. You know, I should at least.
How many teams do you support, by the way?
Hey, look, man, don't judge me.
Because I feel like you support every team on the planet, to be honest, apart from United.
And you know what, right? I was once a United fan. Pre-2004, I was a United fan. Crazy, right?
Do you know what? This is a whole different conversation, different podcast, because I don't know what team you're loyal to, but yeah.
But my loyalties are to Chelsea and Crystal Palace and Fulham and Leyton Orient. You know, gotta keep them in there. But you know, it's wild. I do understand. But look, Palace right now, they are hard to beat and currently doing incredibly well after losing key players. And I think that's a testament to their manager, Oliver Glasner, because each season it seems like they are losing one key player after the next, and they still find a way. And, you know, a player that is becoming a key player would be their fullback. I forget his name, but their fullback, he to me is becoming a key player. And I feel like Mateta up front is balling out of control. And I feel like that's a player there who potentially looks like could be off to maybe a guaranteed top 6, top 7 club. You know, he's in scintillating form, you know, and is playing very, very, very well. So for me, I think, you know, the manager is doing an absolute dream job at the club. And, you know, shrewd signings like Dean Henderson, you know, Adam Wharton, again, who has become a key player at the club and could potentially see himself at Liverpool if the rumors are true. You know, we all know about Mark Guehi and what he's doing and how he's performing and where he could be going. So, you know, it's looking good. Tyreek Mitchell, you know, is, you know, their left back. He is flown totally under the radar. And for me, looks to be a player who should for me be in the England squad. If Lewis Skelly is in the England squad, then, you know, for me, Tyreek Mitchell should be as well. And then you've got their fullback whose name has just come back into memory, Munoz, you know, who has been phenomenal. What an engine he has, by the way. You know, he's running that flank like it owes him money. You know, what a player he's been. And you can see that they've just got a bunch of guys that, you know, want to work hard for each other and want to do well, you know, with each other. So it's been a good run for them so far, you know, and we'll see how it goes, you know, in their upcoming fixture against well, they got the Conference League against Dynamo Kiev tomorrow, and hopefully, you know, they do well in that, you know, and then Sunday against Everton away, which is going to be a massive game because Everton currently are performing quite well and are quite strong when playing at home. So let's see how it all plays out, you know. And yeah, you know, that is the weekly football roundup. And guys, I would just love to say it would be great if you can help us on the road to 100 subscribers. We're currently sitting at 87. So if you can hit that subscribe button, share the video, share the content if you do like it. You know, we do our best to turn up for you guys every week to give you guys our thoughts and our opinions on, you know, the footballing landscape. And yeah, you know, tune in for the next episode.